And welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Axion,
And I'm Sint.
and we are continuing playing through Final Fantasy V and discussing Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I almost said Sorcerer's Stone. We're a few books ahead of there.
It's my fault for bringing it up last episode. Anyway, let's continue our thought from the last episode. We're talking about, symbolism of prophecy and such. So, where we left off, I had mentioned that, Sirius Black could kind of be seen as a dangerous animal in his own right because of his animagus form of a big old black dog, which I choose to interpret as a Newfie because Newfies are big floofs. Coincidentally resembling the Grimm, the black dog, just an omen of death. Harry mentions seeing it. Ron mentions that his uncle had seen it and then died of fright shortly after. Hermione thinks this is an absolute load, and that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. But Professor Trelawney is also convinced that you saw the Grimm, that means you're going to die. And McGonagall is firmly on Team Hermione. He's like, yeah, she's predicted once a year that there's going to be a student that dies. None of them have managed it yet. So, we already have
Admittedly, we have, there is reason to guess that McGonagall may be saying that simply because, don't want to encourage a panic.
On the one hand, yes. On the other hand, McGonagall is never shown as shying away from a chance to take shots at Trelawney throughout the book.
Exactly.
And she also get along.
She also doesn't tend to try to deliberately soften the message for the students whenever things come up. She's very blunt, very straightforward, and very direct with the students in a way that not every teacher is. Oh, that's not good.
It's fine. But, yeah. So, we can look into all sorts of prophecy here. Because there are so many ways it can take different shapes over different types of media. And this seems very kitchen sink in that, divination class seems to be focused on all sorts of different ways to do basic divination. Reading tea leaves, looking at a crystal ball, so on and so forth. Tea leaves are the first lesson, and Harry is convinced he can't see anything other than random shapeless blobs. That makes me wonder if it's meant to look like a Rorschach test, or if there is, you have to have an inherent knack to do it properly. Hermione also struggles with divination, dismisses it as a load of bunk, and basically gets told that she doesn't like it just because she's not innately good at it like she is everything else. Which, I won't say that kind of personality does not react that way, because don't call me out like this book, but... Shush.
No, I sympathize because I was the exact... Oh, that was bad. I was exactly the same way. If it did not come naturally to me, I typically lost interest very quickly.
Yeah. So, divination is kind of interesting that it's introduced the way it is in this book, because it's introduced in the same story that makes you really question it, because you also have access to time travel and the idea of a stable time loop. So, Harry and Hermione are encouraged by Dumbledore at the end of the story to use time travel to change what they understand is going to happen. But as they go through with this, they discover that they're basically just making sure that what has already happened, happened. So, as we've mentioned before, Harry and Hermione are cornered by Dementors who have gotten a little bit out of hand and are about to be kissed by the Dementors when a Patronus in the shape of a stag across the lake saves them. Harry looks over, thinks he sees the ghost of his father. When they actually go back in time to do this properly, Harry hides, waiting to see his father, because he's really what he wants. We've known that since the Mirror of Erised. But when no one shows up, he realizes, no, I didn't see my father's ghost, I saw myself, but I thought I saw my father's ghost, so it's not a paradox. So, in going back to change things, they went back to change exactly nothing. Buckbeak had always escaped. What they thought was the beheading earlier was the executioner frustratedly smacking his axe into a pumpkin. The only proof we had was Hermione mentioning that they did it, but that means Hermione watched and saw herself and knew better than to explain what was going on, because time travel paradoxes.
Which is probably for the best.
Yeah. So, this effectively means if there is a device, and I imagine there is more than one time turner, because as I've mentioned before, I would not trust the only copy of a time machine to a teenager to go do some math classes with. If it was the only copy of it, there's probably more than one time turner. But if a device exists that allows people to go back in time and make sure that that certain events happen the way they're meant to happen, what's the point of divination?
Oh, there we go. There's your weakness.
It's like, Harry's prophecy comes true that he made during his final, but he didn't make a prophecy. He made it up so he didn't fail the class because he couldn't see anything in the crystal ball. He said, oh, Buckbeak is flying away, and Trelawney, who is really in here just for the tragedies, I don't know why, she writes sins, not tragedies, now that's in your head, she seemed disappointed that he saw a happy ending, so I think she marked him down for it. So that kind of raises further questions about the validity of divination if your prophecy is going to be graded based on whether or not your professor likes the prophecy. So, what is the point of a divination class if events are always going to be set in stone anyway, and most people want to see the future so they can try to avert disaster? We'll find out more later on in the series that makes divination and prophecies even more fraught, but that's for another time. So, yeah, what's your thought on the whole, divination in a world with time travel situation?
So, the only reason it really makes any sense whatsoever is because of things that happen in other books. And since we are trying to avoid spoilers for books that we haven't yet fully reviewed, and are trying to work our way through the series chronologically, we don't yet have that information. So as it currently stands, divination seems like a whole lot of bupkis. Trelawney makes one prophecy, quote-unquote, that happens to be correct, and as far as we know, that's just her getting lucky. We have no reason at this time, until further things are revealed in later stories, to assume that she has any actual divinatory power. Things happen later, of course, that change this, as anyone
nothing happens in this book that changes that.
That's what I was saying, in later books. Yeah.
No, this book. Remember, she has a prophecy right at the end of Harry's final about
That's what I was saying.
escaping.
That's what I was saying.
Sorry. I missed that, sorry.
Yeah. She has one that happens to be correct, and as far as we know, at this point in the full series, that's just her getting lucky.
I think we do have Dumbledore confirming that she has had another one before. Yes. He doesn't explain it, but we know it's not a fluke.
Yeah. We know she's been right on occasions before. We do not know, one, why she is right, two, if she has any actual divinatory power, or three, why Dumbledore knows and can confirm her capabilities.
See, I would actually argue that proves she does have divinatory power, but that divinatory power is not something that can be consciously tapped into. Because she doesn't really teach them anything beyond just, here's how to use a Rorschach test on a cup of tea. A few of the kids seem to be into it, but they also already seem the type to be into that sort of thing. Like, I'm fairly certain these would be the kids looking up horoscopes if they had Muggle newspapers. But every time that we know of, So the one example we have in this book of her giving an accurate prophecy, her voice completely changes. She kind of goes into a trance and does not remember doing it. She sees the future, she relays what she sees, and she has no power over this, which suggests to me that true oracles are involuntary and rare.
Yep.
Which kind of makes you wonder, what is the purpose of a divination class if the circumstances of such magic are completely at random?
And
Like, I can't say flukes because it's probably just a few people who have the ability to do it, so it's not just I did it once and never again. It's I say exactly what I need to say when I am needed to say it, but I
Yep.
cannot summon it.
Yep. And we learn, again, in later books that this has happened before. When this happens, it's always accurate. And some other details that explain why there's a divination class and such, and all that comes into better focus later.
So yeah, which kind of lets us a little bit of movement to look at the whole time travel situation now, since divination's kind of there, and it had basically no bearing on what future they changed. Like as mentioned, the only prophecy they were adjusting was the one that Harry pulled out of the ether to pass a test. Not even one, just wishful thinking. So, time travel is one of those things that if you are not very careful with how you use it, how you set it up, how you foreshadow it being a thing, feels cheap and unsatisfying. For example, in a statement that's going to get me banned from the internet, I did not think the time travel worked at all with the Avengers. I think that they pulled it out of nowhere when they realized they had to undo things because it's a comic book movie and they didn't leave themselves a proper out, and improperly foreshadowed time travel is the last refuge of the hack and the desperate. I think Azkaban actually did this decently well, because we did have hints all throughout the book before the reveal that Hermione was doing more than is physically possible to do in a given time period. She signed up for too many classes. She never explained how she was getting all of them, but she also said she hadn't missed any. She is seen apparently teleporting to Harry and Ron's perspective because, like, she obviously used the time turner when they weren't looking to go to class and was trying to catch up to where she was before she used it. So they see her down the hall from where she'd been and had no explanation for it. Getting the time turner reveal at the end made perfect sense of all of that. Hermione also stressed to Harry the importance of not being seen, not letting on, because no one needed to know about this. She's only supposed to use it for a specific purpose, which she was, because she was a good kid. And yeah, they are very, very careful to do nothing to disrupt the timeline because they don't want to break things.
Yep.
So they are very cautious about how they use it. It's not just an oopsie doopsie, let's go undo things we don't like. It's no, they had to let things they didn't like happen. They had to let Snape get the invisibility cloak. They had to let Sirius be apprehended. They had to let Pettigrew get away because that would have changed too much. They would have gotten caught. It was too risky. And if they had chased after Pettigrew, they would not have been present to save their own lives. So the time travel was very restricted, decently foreshadowed. It did not feel like it came out of nowhere as a deus ex machina to clean up messy writing.
Yep. Which there's plenty about Rowling's writing that can get messy, but this is remarkably not one of them.
Yep, and the fact that Hermione gave back the time turner shows that it's not going to be a crutch to be used in the future, which is another risk that happens when you introduce this ability into a franchise. Well, you did this before, can't you do it again? No, we have relinquished this power. Hermione made the decision to not overload on classes the next year, so she didn't go through another year like that, and since she only had the time machine to do her classes, she had to give it back. Because that was the agreement. She couldn't explain, can I please have it again in case I need to subvert a legal ruling? I don't think that would go over well with the Ministry.
Hey, those are my two most powerful fighters. How did you just kidnap them?
Thought.
This is going to stink.
It's okay, Bartz. Just do the lammy dance. He even looks a little bit like Dipper in it, doesn't he?
I could have won that fight if I wasn't solo. Oh, hey, we're in prison again. And no Sid here to blow up the wall for us.
So I think you're supposed to lose that fight. It's been a long time since I've played
I'm
this.
guessing. Since I didn't, like... Oh, hello.
So, yeah. What else do you have to add on the subject of divination and time travel ethics?
Let me think.
It's like, I know you have thoughts on time travel, because I know your favorite game.
There's not a whole lot I can say about time travel in this regard that you haven't already covered. The time travel in Harry Potter is extremely simplistic. There's almost no room for paradoxes. It operates via very strict situations with regards to time loops and with regards to cause and effect. Everything that's going to happen already happened. There's some level of predestination, at lack for a better word. Which, of course, brings into the question the nature of free will in the Harry Potter world. But,
Which I think is very present, if only through the Sorting Hat, but it does get very, very muddled just with all the magic going on, which we'll get into more in later
yeah,
books.
I was
when that
meaning
becomes
more
the
on.
question.
I was meaning more on like a cosmic sense.
Yeah, how much of everything is predestined? Because I don't believe everything is prophesied. So, with that in mind, not everything is already foreseen and must happen, and sometimes even the prophecies that are handed down have room for interpretation, which will be relevant later. We'll get into that in later books when it actually comes up.
Hey, look, it's our friend.
Well. But yeah, so next time?
Yep, next time.